and we'll finish up our chat discussing the lineup for the Premier League. Oh, wait, no, we won't be doing that because there was no announcement for the Premier League. It usually is after the World Championship final. Barry Hearn or Matt Porter will come on the Sky Sports broadcast and tell us the names of players that are going to be involved in the Premier League this year. But the announcement has not been made yet. Why do you think that was?
I think the popular opinion as to why is most likely why. And we've heard, people from Sky as well say that they want Fallon in. We've heard managers and other insiders want Fallon. Of course, obviously there are those that don't want her in. But I think the PDC and fairly, I think, have decided they're not going to put her in unless she wins a tour card. So delaying to after Q School in that regard makes sense, regardless of whether you think she deserves a spot or not. Delaying it to find out if she has a tour card makes sense because assuming that is what they want to do. And there is a good argument for it. She is the most marketable player in the world, or at least very close to Michael Van Gerwen and Peter Wright at the top of the sport in terms of marketability because of who she is and what she has done when she's been given chances. And there's no reason to think she won't rise to the level needed to be competitive because, other than this year at the World Championship side, but everyone has a bad match, she has risen to the level every time we've seen her. She did it at the Grand Slam, nearly making the semifinals after beating some very good players. She did it at the Danish Dart or the Nordic Darts Masters, making the final and having opportunities to beat Michael Van Gerwen in the final. She obviously did it at the World Championships a couple years ago when she beat Menzer-Sulovic, when she beat Ted Evans, and when she pushed Chris Dobie, who was having a breakthrough season, to 6 sets in a best-out-of-7 match, playing very well in the process. So if the goal is to give her that chance to be in the Premier League, but making sure she wins a tour card first, the decision makes perfect sense. If it's something else, I'm not sure I understand what it could be. And maybe it's that they don't know yet what's going on with Omicron, and they don't want to put the field together before they know whether the event can even go on as an international event in front of a crowd in February and March. That could be another reason, but I feel like that would have been something that you could have come out and said, we want to see what's going on first and figure out if we might have to rearrange fixtures or rearrange the structure for a year because of what's going on. If that was the case, I think they would have said something, which brings me back to it's most likely about Fallon. If that's the case, let's see how she does at Q School. If she gets a tour card and she's in, well, then we know that I and most everyone else was right. If she doesn't get a tour card, I don't think she gets in. And then it becomes a question who the field is. And you have to think it's the top 10 if they keep it to the format they had last year and what the format was without the challengers. If it has the challengers, I don't know. Maybe Jose, despite being reigning runner-up, gets left out. Maybe Dimitri gets left out, though he would be very hard done if that's the case. We'll see what happens, but I think it comes down right now to does Fallon get a tour card? Because if she does, I think she gets in, and that's why it was postponed. But we'll have to hang tight for a little bit.
Just looking at what Matt Porter did put out on Twitter this morning, he said, just a friendly, helpful tip from me. Honestly, don't waste your time trying to guess why we haven't announced the Premier League details yet. You'll never get it right. So we are wasting our time here. But I agree. I personally think that the top 10 is the way to go if it is going to be 10 straight players. But there is a lot of talk on social media among darts fans that the PDC are waiting to see how Fallon Sherrock gets on at Q School, which of course starts this Sunday. If she gets that tour card, does she get a spot in the Premier League? I think if she doesn't get the tour card, she doesn't get a spot in the Premier League. I personally think that if she'd have won that World Series against Michael Van Gerwen in the final, she'd have been given a spot regardless of the tour card. And also think if she'd have beaten Peter Wright in the Grand Slam quarterfinals, that game which went really close, I think she'd have been given a spot regardless of being a tour card holder. But the fact that she went out first round of the World Championship kind of set her back quite a bit for me. And I think, if the PDT are waiting to see if Fallon will get that tour card, it's their right, isn't it? It's their event. They can decide what they want. But for me, I think that the 10 players pick themselves if it is a 10-player lineup. If they're going to shake it up a little bit more, then we'll see if they bring in the challengers, the contenders, or maybe something completely different. We're not going to be able to guess it. But you mentioned it. I personally think the main reason is they're holding back is because of COVID-19 and the impact that it had on the World Championship. We had 3 players test positive, had to pull out during the tournament. You had 3 other players, maybe even more, but we know definitely 3, Raymond van Barneveld, Danny Noppert, Kim Huybrechts, all test positive after the tournament. And it's having an impact, isn't it? And the PDC, they've put out their calendar for this season from January with the Masters at the end of the month up till the end of October. It's a stacked calendar. You've got the Premier League Thursday nights rolling into the Euro Tours Players Championships at the weekends. Is the time right for them to bring that back? We just don't know, given the uncertainty there still is around the world, not just in darts, but in all sports. The Premier League football, we've seen games postponed over Christmas. Is something that all of sport, all of the world is going to have to deal with going into 2022, and especially with the Premier League as well. You look at it, you've got, as you said, you've got nights in Holland, Germany, Scotland, Ireland, the opening night in Wales this time next month, and at the minute Wales are pretty tight on their restrictions. So I think they are giving themselves a little bit of time. They've got a little bit of time now after the World Championship to really look at how things are going to progress in this first quarter of the year when the Premier League starts. So for me, I think they're giving themselves a little bit of time to see just how things are going to work for the calendar this year. But I think the Fallon thing, I think that's a genuine shout. If she gets a tour card, then I think they put her in. So that extra bit of time may work in their favour as well. They get to see if she gets a tour card and put her in.